A very welcome to one and all to the paper signatures, and we you are induced into the in a warm welcome to one and all to the paper signatures. So we are moving on to module 1, in which there is a poem which is when I was growing up, penned by Nellie Wang. She is a poet and activist, was born in Oakland in California. She is the daughter of a Chinese immigrant, and in her poetry and through her community activism, she confronts social problems such as racism, sexism, and labor issues. Member of various literary, artistic, and political groups, including Radical Women, the Freedom Socialist Party, and the National Asian American Telecommunications Association. And in the year 1989, she received a Women of Words award from the San Francisco Women Foundations. And it is something. She is a renowned revolutionary feminist poet and activist who has strived to address social causes. Her parents were Chinese immigrants. At a very early age, she started working in a restaurant begun by her parents. After having graduated from Oakland High School, she worked as a secretary for Bethlehem Steel Corporation for several years. Later, she studied creative writing at San Francisco State University. During the Second World War, when Japan bombed America's naval base Pearl Harbor, Nellie Wong was a child. So, this particular poem, When I Was Growing Up, is an autobiographical poem written by this lady who was a revolutionary feminist activist, Nellie Wang. And in this poem also, she reflects on the universal representation of Western ideals of beauty advertised in American popular culture, from which Wang expresses her desire to be white, to be normal. She states in the poem that to become a woman, a desirable woman, I began to wear imaginary pale skin. And the lack of and negative stereotypical representation of Asian American women in Western popular culture denied Nellie Wong the agency to privilege her intersectional identity. So, in the poem, When I Was Growing Up, she relates the struggle of a Chinese girl growing up, searching to find her voice in a predominantly white cultural majority. So, this is the occasion in which the poem is written. And in the Second World War period, Japanese Americans were evacuated to concentration camps since Japan bombed America's naval base at Pearl Harbor. It had a fearful and painful impact on Wong's family because they were considered as Japanese, where they were actually Chinese Americans. And we shall see the collection of works by Wang. She has published and she was published her first book of poetry, Dreams in Harrison Railroad Park, in 1977. Wang's anthology of poetry includes The Death of a Long Steam Lady, that is in 1986, Stalin Moments in 1997, and Breakfast, Dinner, Lunch in 2012. Again, this lady, she's that of a Chinese American writer, and she is someone who's best known for her themes of feminism and identity. So, I have already told you this poem is autobiographical, and at the same time, it represents the plight of all women immigrants in America. It talks about her past and her journey from childhood to adolescence. With each passing stanza, there is a progression of time, attitude, and outlook. Okay, we shall see the poem in detail. So, this is the opening stanza. I know now that once I longed to be white. How? You ask. Let me tell you the ways. When I was growing up, people told me I was dark, and I believed my own darkness in the mirror. In my soul, my own narrow vision. So this poem that is opens with the thoughts of a young girl who wishes to disown her identity and culture, and she is someone who tries to fit into the dominant white majority. So here she is talking like that I wanted to be one once. Okay, it's not that I'm now. So this that is when I'm growing up, people told me I was dark, and I believed my own darkness in the mirror. And again she tell us when I was growing up, it is my sisters with fair skin God praised for the beauty, and I fell further crushed between high walls. When I was growing up, my sisters with fair skin got praise for the beauty, and I fell further crushed between high walls. When I was growing up, I read magazines and saw movies, blonde movie stars, white skin, sensuous lips, and to be elevated to become a woman, a desirable woman. I began to wear imaginary pale skin. So it is here she is talk about the discrimination that she faced because of her appearance and color, and she is someone she expresses her desire to be like the fair, blonde, sensuous, desirable American woman. Okay, so this is something the discrimination was so evident that she started believing in her own darkness, and there she began wearing imaginary pale skin, and she has found that her sisters, she calls the white American ladies as her sisters, and they all having the fair skin, they are praising for the beauty, and she is crushed from the high walls to the lower floor. And she is someone who read magazines and saw movies where only fairness is elevated and fair people are become the movie stars. The white skin and the sensuous lips are elevated to be the structure of the epitome of beauty, and she wanted to become a lady of desire, a lady where all men desires, and for that she began to wear imaginary pale skin. And then again, she tells us that when I was growing up, I was proud of my English, my grammar, my spelling, fitting into the group of smart children, smart Chinese children, fitting and belonging, getting in line. And when I was growing up and went to high school, I discovered the rich white girls, a few yellow girls, their imported cotton dresses, their Kashmiri sweaters, their curly hair, and I thought that I too should have what these lucky girls had. So this is it is something, the discrimination that is so evident. Okay, she says that in spite of having a good command over the American language and American lifestyle, she was still an un American. She recollects the memory of being selected by white men with happiness. She says that it made her feel special and precious. She started believing that she represents the Eastern beauty, and it is she is having all the qualities an American lady she is possessing. She know the language. And she went to high school. She discovered there are rich white girls there. There are few yellow girls like her, and the curly hair are there. She thought that she too should have what these lucky girls had, because she is something that she represents a kind of a beauty too. And then again, she says, when I was growing up, I hungered American food, American lifestyles, coded, white, and even to me, a child born of Chinese parents, being Chinese was feeling foreign, was limiting, was an American. So that was she says here. Like she says, in spite of having all the qualities that they are possessing like her, she was still an American. And she is something she recollected the when I was growing up and white men wanted to take me out. I thought I was special, an exotic gardenia, and anxious to fit the stereotype of an Oriental chick. So here we had a reference like Oriental. So Oriental, which is a term referring to Asian people. So the term is regarded as offensive by Asians, especially by Asian American. That's what she is taking it out. And there is a particular word which is Oriental chick. That's an Asian female, because of a girl with Asian proportions of beauty. So there are a reference like yellow color is also. So people having a yellowish skin regarded as an offensive term for Asians too again. And there is a repetition of yellow color in the poem. So that is something which make which is telling that of discrimination that the Americans had for the Asians. And then again, she says, when I was growing up, I felt ashamed of some yellow man. Their small bones, their frail bodies, they're spitting on the streets, they're coughing, they're lying in sandless rooms, shooting themselves in the arms. So here she compares her own people, that is Chinese men in particular, and men from the East in general, to the white man. And it's like she feels that the former is inferior, which means the her own men are inferior to the later in all aspect. She says that she is ashamed of her people for the uncultured ways and habits. For that, she says the uncultured ways, like they are having a small bones, they are having frail bodies, they are spitting on the streets, they are coughing, they are lying on the sunless rooms and shooting themselves in the arms. Okay, that is something she says on about her own people. It's because she is ashamed of her own people, and she says they are uncultured for their habits. And she again says, when I was growing up, people would ask if I were Filipino, a Polynesian, Portuguese. They named all colors except white, the shell of my soul, but not my rough, dark skin. And here again, she says, she then moves on to talk about the insensitivity of people who take her identity for granted. They call her Portuguese, Polynesian, Philippine, without the slightest concern for her feelings. And this is her feelings. Then again, she says, when I was growing up, I felt ashamed of some yellow man. So that is what she said. And again, she says, when I was growing up, I felt dirty. I thought that God made white people clean. Okay? And no matter how much I bathed, I could not change. I could not shed my skin. That is in the grey water. Okay, so this is something very interesting to read. So, so this is something. All these led to a major shift in that poet's attitude and tone. And she says, there is a Malayalam proverb like "Kulchal kokavila" പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുള്ള probably that. So she thought that it is God who made all these differences. He made all the divisions, the discriminations, there is not even have an equality in his creation of people. That God made white people clean, so they are clean. No matter how much I bathed, she says she could not change. I could not shed my skin in the grey water. So again, in the other line, she has used a term like ghetto and all. So ghetto is an area in a city, especially we are like a slum area where people of a particular race or religion live closely together. And Filipino, there is a particular reference to that. Filipino is native inhabitant of Philippines, that you know. Polynesian, there is a term like the indigenous people who inhabits the islands of Polynesia. And so here again, it is said like, when I was growing up, I swore I would run away to purple mountains, houses by the sea with nothing over my head, with space to breathe, uncongested with yellow people, in an area called Chinatown, in an area I later learned was a ghetto, one of many hearts of Asian American. So here we are getting a reference to a particular area of a city outside China where many Chinese people live, and there are loads of Chinese restaurants and shops. So from there she wanted to escape to an area. So that is a space she wanted to breathe. She wanted to get away from the yellow people in that particular area in the Chinatown. So and then again, it is a Chinatown where she regarded as a ghetto. Ghetto is a slum area. A particular race or religion live closely from they are separated. There is a system of apartheid system there. And so in the final stanza we are getting like she wanted to get rid of her Asian American identity to American identity. So in the final stanza, there we have a major shift in the poet's attitude. She understands that however hard she may try, she is always the other in quotes. So for the whites, so I know now that once I long to be white. How many more ways, you ask? Haven't I told you enough? This is it. She accepts her ethnic identity and breaks the American stereotype of beauty. She yearns to run to her homeland where she can breathe freely and be her own self. So that is something she has realized and of her own identity. So here in this poem, she begins the poem with "I know now that once I long to be white." The particular line itself, the poet wants to be run away from the privileges she attributes to be a member of a cultural majority. Okay. Earlier she was ashamed of her darker Asian skin and Chinese culture, and here she laments like, I could not change, I could not shed my skin. Okay, I could not change and I could not shed my skin. And so this is a poem details the feelings of the speaker as she was growing up in America while simultaneously being immersed in Chinese culture. She wanted to be part of the American white culture as it was depicted and glamorized by media and movies. And then again, she addressed the issues such as feminism, immigration, identity through her poems. And she was also involved with Women Writers Union on campus, organizing programs on issues of race, sex, and class. She had a great adherence to Asian American culture, and her literary discourses discussed these identity issues at length. So, Nellie Wang the poet, we can see the themes like feminism കാണാൻ പറ്റും, ഇമിഗ്രേഷൻ ഒരു ഭാഗത്ത് നിൽക്കാം. സോ ദർ ഓൺ ഹോംലാൻഡ് ആയിരിക്കും, പക്ഷേ ആ ഹോംലാൻഡിൽ ഇപ്പം നമുക്ക് കുറേ ഇൻസ്റ്റൻസസ് നമ്മൾ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലേ. സ്വന്തം നാട്ടിൽ നിൽക്കാൻ പറ്റാതെ വേറൊരു നാട്ടിലേക്ക് ഓടിപ്പോണ കുറേ ഇൻസ്റ്റൻസസ് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ റീസെൻ്റ്ലി കുറേ മീഡിയയിൽ കൂടി നിങ്ങൾ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടായിരിക്കും. ആൻഡ് ഐഡൻറ്റിറ്റി ക്രൈസിസ്, അവർക്കൊരു നാട്ടിൽ ഒരു ഐഡൻറ്റിറ്റി ഇല്ലാത്തുള്ള ആ ഒരു ഫീലിങ്സൊക്കെ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടായിരിക്കും. സോ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വെരി റെലവൻറ്റ് ടോപ്പിക് ഇൻ ടുഡേയ്സ് days also. So she was a person who was also involved with Women Writers Union. And she organized a lot of programs on issues of racism, sexual sexism and class issues and all. So നമുക്ക് ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ ഒരു അവസ്ഥയിൽ വി ക്യാൻ വെരി മച്ച് റിലേറ്റഡ് ടു ഓൾ ദിസ് ആ ഒരു കൾച്ചറൽ ഡിഫറൻസും ആ റിലീജിയൻ ഡിഫറൻസും ക്ലാസ് ഡിഫറൻസും ഉള്ള ഉണ്ടാവാൻ പോകുന്ന ആ ഒരു ഐഡൻറ്റിറ്റി ഇഷ്യൂസ് അറ്റ് length. So she is a person who she wrote from her own personal identity. She wrote for her life as a theme, her family history, and she is a person who declared her feminist socialist perspective in her writing. And there is an instance she wrote where, the more I see some people fighting back. So she wanted not to be silent anymore. She wanted to people to react, fight back. The more I see everyone acquiring the strength to fight back. And she delivered a series of lectures in radical women's conferences. Like there are lot many conferences she has organized, like Women and Revolution Alive and Inseparable. And though she reflected her feminist ideologies, though she considered the freedom of women as necessary as a breath. Okay, in her preaches she reminds the whole world that that is something personal is political too. And she was an advocate of revolutionary feminism, and she is a person, she has also believed that women are not a mere victim on earth. Instead they should fly with what? Colors. Fly with colors. So again, this is a poem which is an autobiographical poem which was published in the year 1973. So in this poem she emphasized on the identity crisis experienced by the Asian Americans, and it depicts the history of the poet itself and her own family. So the poem is composed in past tense. When you look in very deep into the poem, this poem is composed in past tense. So at the outset of the poem she describes her desperation in a society that celebrates what? White beauty. When she grew up, she realized that it was white people who appeared in movies and magazines and the world elevated as the so-called desirable women, and signifies that how the popular culture in America has cultivated these ideas of beauty by creating a wrong notion of being white. The poet herself imagined as white and started to wear pale skin. Okay, and then again in the next stanzas she narrates how she was trying to be adapted to the Western language and culture. She tried a lot to change her skin, change her ways, everything. and she met white girls who wore imported cotton dresses and thought that she too should have these fortunes. And again, in the poem, we can very well trace that she grew up, she longed for the American food and style. There she has used the word hungered. So the word hungered, which is something that shows the intensity of a desire to imitate the American lifestyle. She began to hate yellow men and felt ashamed of being with them, and their acts were considered as cultureless. That made her skin, that is the dark skin she is telling us, was dirty and tried to wash it away. She says, I could not shed my skin in the grey water. She swore she would run away to somewhere unoccupied with yellow people. Wong concludes this poem with a note of self-realization about her identity. She reconciles herself with her Chinese American identity, thereby dismantling the stereotype of Western beauty cult. So this is the poem is all about that of this lady who has written all these things like when I was growing up. So this particular poem is frequently anthologized poems in educational curricula. So this autobiographical poem highlights the identity crisis experienced by Asian Americans. So this is again where she you depicts the past of the poet, her early childhood and adolescence. So she is an Asian American, Chinese, born of Chinese parents, and she is someone forced to incorporate the dominant white culture, and she disowned that of her own owing to her fear of being discriminated. So she is in a white culture elsewhere in society. That is something that meshed her with all its privileges. And so this is her. Later, she reconciles herself with her Chinese American identity. She dismantles all the stereotypes of the Western beauty cult. So here in this poem, that is it's very there is a very little usage of capitalism in the poem. So that is there are lot many questions to she is asking us. So there are repetitive lines that also she has used here. So this is all about poem. So I'm ending with a quote by her, like, a lot of my poems come from the workplace. That is where I have experienced a great deal of sexism and racism, which is continuing again and again. Okay, so this is a poem by Nellie, When I Was Growing Up. Thank you.